For 40 years, the U.S. government conducted this study. And, they denied treatment to black men with syphilis.
Mm-hmm.
And they did this even after penicillin became widely available.
Right.
We're going to deep dive into this whole thing, the Tuskegee syphilis study.
Yeah.
And I guess we want to explore how something so horrific could happen.
Right.
So we'll be looking at the scientific beliefs at the time,
Of course.
the racism in society,
Yeah.
and the individual choices that kind of led to this whole tragedy.
Right.
And we're using the You're Wrong About podcast.
Okay.
They have 2-part series
Yeah, they're great.
on this subject.
Yeah, they're fantastic.
Yeah.
It's easy to look back and just label everyone involved as monsters.
Right.
But it's more complicated than that.
Sure.
The study began in 1932
Okay.
during the Great Depression.
Right.
Syphilis was rampant,
Especially in the South.
especially in black communities in the rural South.
Yeah. And treatment back then wasn't easy.
No, not at all. No.
Treatments were harsh, involving heavy metals like mercury and arsenic.
Oh, wow.
Oh.
Yeah. Okay, so when this study began in Macon County, Alabama,
Right.
it was a treatment program,
It was initially conceived as a treatment program, yeah.
and they even got funding.
Yes.
Yeah.
They secured funding from the Julius Rosenwald Fund,
Right.
a philanthropic organization dedicated to black health.
Wow.
$50,000 in 1930s money
That's...
was a significant investment.
Yeah, so where did things go so wrong?
Well, the funding dried up during the Great Depression.
Okay.
Instead of shutting down the project,
Great.
the researchers, they decided to shift from treatment to observation.
Okay.
They initially planned to observe the men without treatment for 6 months. But as we know, it didn't stop there.
Right.
This seemingly small shift from treating to observing
Yeah.
marked a turning point
Okay.
toward a purely observational study with a focus on autopsies.
And they never told the men that they actually had syphilis.
No, they used the term bad blood,
Oh, right.
a vague and misleading term that didn't convey the seriousness of their condition.
It's disturbing how this deception was woven into every aspect of the study.
Absolutely.
Like they were giving them placebos.
They gave the men placebos like aspirin, telling them it was special treatment.
Right.
Even worse, they subjected them to painful spinal taps, again, claiming it was a necessary procedure for their bad blood.
Wow.
Yeah. It's important to understand the context of eugenics.
Okay.
A racist ideology
Right.
that was pervasive in the early 20th century.
Eugenics, wasn't that the belief in improving the human race through selective breeding?
Yes, and at its core was a deeply racist and flawed understanding of genetics.
Got it.
Researchers believe that syphilis affected black men differently than white men,
Wow.
a belief rooted in the notion of black inferiority.
It's crazy how they even leveraged the reputation of the Tuskegee Institute,
Yeah.
a respected black institution.
And a black nurse, Eunice Rivers, to gain the trust of the participants.
Whoa, wow.
It's almost unthinkable, a black nurse wanting to help her community,
Yeah.
caught up in this web of lies.
It speaks to how systems of oppression can co-opt good intentions and manipulate individuals.
Right.
And it's important to note that the researchers leading this study,
Okay.
Talia Farrow Clark and Raymond Vonderler, they believed they were doing something important.
They felt justified in their actions.
They genuinely believed they had a moral obligation to learn as much as possible about syphilis,
Right.
even at the expense of the men's well-being.
Even though they were contributing to their ailments?
They acknowledged that they were contributing to the men's ailments and shortened lifespans, but saw this as a necessary sacrifice for the sake of scientific knowledge.
So by 1933,
Yeah.
what started as a short-term observation
Right.
had morphed into a long-term project
Yes.
with a horrifying goal.
Right.
Track these men until their deaths.
Exactly. And as we'll see, the study continued for decades,
Oh, wow.
even when a cure became readily available. So let's move ahead to the 1940s, when World War II broke out.
Okay.
A lot of the men in the study became eligible for the draft.
Did they serve?
No, the researchers actually took steps to prevent them from enlisting.
What?
They submitted the names of 256 men to the local draft board,
Wow.
requesting their exclusion from service.
So they were denied the chance to fight for their country.
Yeah, on the surface, it might seem like a protective measure,
Right.
but their motives were far more sinister.
Right.
They needed to keep the men in the study,
Oh,
even if it meant denying them this opportunity.
wow. So it gets even worse.
It gets worse.
Yeah.
They provide a list of the men to local doctors,
Oh, no.
urging them to avoid diagnosing or treating their syphilis.
Oh, wow.
These men were systematically excluded from any form of treatment.
And all this happened just as penicillin became widely available
Yeah,
as a cure for syphilis.
it's hard to fathom.
So they knew there was a cure,
They knew.
but they still chose to withhold it.
They justify their inaction by pointing to early concerns about penicillin's effectiveness for latent syphilis,
Right.
issues like dosage, allergic reactions,
Right.
and a potentially fatal side effect called the Jarisch-Herxheimer reaction.
But all those concerns were resolved as penicillin became the standard treatment.
Absolutely. However, the researchers clung to those early doubts.
Right.
They argued that it was a unique opportunity
To observe.
to observe the long-term effects of untreated syphilis,
Okay.
a study they believed could never be replicated.
Wow.
So even as the world embraced penicillin as a miracle cure,
Right.
the men in Tuskegee were kept in the dark,
Yeah.
denied access to treatment that could have saved their lives.
So what about the scientific rigor of the study?
Right.
Was the data they collected even reliable?
This is where it gets even more disturbing.
Okay.
The researchers' record-keeping was shockingly poor.
Oh, wow.
Despite their claims of scientific importance,
Right.
they lost track of participants,
Really?
switched men between treatment and control groups.
Wow.
And even failed to conduct autopsies on a lot of the men.
So their justifications for continuing the study were based on flawed data.
Exactly.
It underscores the utter disregard for the men's lives,
Yeah.
all for data that was compromised and unreliable.
It's crucial to remember that these were not just data points,
Right.
but individuals.
Of course.
Men, like Freddie Lee Tyson,
Okay.
was a participant in the study.
What happened to him?
Well, he went on to build a life beyond sharecropping,
Wow.
even helping to construct the barracks for the Tuskegee Airmen.
Oh, wow.
His daughter, Lilyhead,
Hmm.
has spoken about the importance of remembering these men as individuals
Right.
with hopes and dreams,
Of course.
not just victims of this horrific experiment.
Yeah, it's a testament to their strength
Yeah.
and resilience that they persevered
Mm-hmm.
despite all these challenges.
And these men were not passive subjects.
Right.
They resisted in their own ways,
Okay.
hiding from researchers, refusing procedures,
Hmm.
even voicing their concerns.
All right, and then there's Eunice Rivers,
Yeah.
the black nurse who worked on this study for decades.
It must be a complicated legacy for her.
It is.
I mean, she believed she was providing care.
She believed she was providing care and protection for these men,
Right.
shielding them from the racism they would have experienced with white doctors.
But she was also complicit in the deception.
Yes. She discouraged the men from seeking outside treatment,
Right.
reinforcing the lie that they were receiving proper care,
Yeah, her story highlights the moral complexities of this study.
and raises difficult questions about individual agency within systems of oppression.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Was she a willing participant
Right.
or a victim herself?
It's a question that continues to be debated.
Yeah.
Amidst all this darkness,
Right.
there were individuals who tried to shed light on what was happening.
I'm assuming they were silenced.
Unfortunately, yes.
Yeah.
The first known whistleblower was a doctor named Irwin Schatz,
Okay.
who wrote a scathing letter to the Public Health Service in 1964,
Oh.
questioning the ethics of allowing men with a treatable disease to go untreated.
And his concerns were dismissed.
His concerns were dismissed.
No.
They said he didn't understand the study's importance.
So they just swept his concerns under the rug.
Essentially,
And then in 1969,
a black statistician within the CDC, Bill Jenkins,
okay.
also raised concerns with his superiors,
Yeah.
but he met similar resistance.
So these early attempts to expose the truth were ignored,
Unfortunately, yes.
allowing the study to continue.
It took a persistent whistleblower, Peter Buxton,
Okay.
to finally break the story.
Okay.
Buxton was a venereal disease investigator in San Francisco
Mm-hmm.
who learned about the study in 1965.
Okay.
He spent years trying to raise awareness.
Within the Public Health Service.
Yes,
And his appeals to their conscience didn't work.
they fell on deaf ears.
Oh, wow.
Finally, he succeeded by framing this study as a potential public relations nightmare for the government.
So he had to resort to a more cynical tactic. Yes, he argued that exposing the study could fuel accusations of racism and exploitation.
Wow.
And that's what finally got their attention.
So sometimes you have to fight fire with fire.
In 1972, Buxton's efforts led to an expose in the Associated Press,
Okay.
revealing the study's horrific details to the world.
So the story breaks.
Yeah.
I would think the public outcry would be Swift and fierce.
You'd think so, but the initial reaction was more focused on the ethical breach
Okay.
than the blatant racism that fueled the study.
Yeah.
The full weight of the racial implications took time to sink in.
It's as if people couldn't fully grasp the horror of what had been done.
Yeah.
I imagine the government's response didn't help.
You're right.
Yeah.
They tried to downplay the severity of what happened,
Right.
claiming that the men wouldn't have benefited from penicillin anyway.
Oh, wow.
They even went so far as to say the men had volunteered for the study,
Wow.
twisting the truth to protect themselves.
So there wasn't any accountability.
Well, it was a long and arduous fight. It took almost a year of public pressure and congressional hearings before the study was finally shut down in 1973.
Oh.
And even then, justice remained elusive.
What about the researchers? Were they held responsible for their actions?
No one faced criminal charges.
Oh, wow.
A class action lawsuit was filed in 1973,
Okay.
but it was settled out of court for a meager sum.
How much?
Each survivor or their family received a mere $37,500.
$37,500.
Yeah.
For 40 years of deceit,
Yeah.
suffering, and preventable deaths.
Yeah.
That's a pittance.
It's hardly an acknowledgement of the wrong that was done.
Right. It speaks volumes about the power dynamics.
Yeah.
You know, these men, already marginalized by poverty and race,
Right.
were denied true justice.
Yeah.
And then there was President Clinton's apology in 1997.
Yeah.
It was a powerful moment.
Mm-hmm.
But could words truly heal the wounds inflicted by decades of abuse?
The apology was a significant step towards acknowledging the government's wrongdoing. Clinton admitted that the study was deeply, profoundly, and morally wrong,
Yeah.
and expressed remorse for the government's actions. But as you pointed out, words alone can't erase the past.
So the legacy of Tuskegee
Yeah.
continues to cast a shadow
Yes.
on the relationship
Yeah.
between the Black community
Yeah.
and the medical establishment.
It's important to consider the perspective of Vanessa Northington Gamble,
Okay.
a medical historian who has written extensively about the study.
Okay.
She argues that we should view this not just as a crisis of distrust,
Okay.
but as a crisis of trustworthiness.
I like that.
Yeah.
The Black community's skepticism towards the medical system
Right.
isn't irrational or unfounded.
Yeah.
It's a direct result of historical and ongoing mistreatment.
Right.
So how do we move forward?
Yeah.
How do we rebuild trust and ensure that nothing like Tuskegee ever happens again?
That's the question we must all grapple with.
All right.
The first step is acknowledging the truth,
Yeah.
confronting the ugliness of the past, and understanding how deeply racism has shaped medical practices and policies.
And good intentions aren't enough.
Good intentions aren't enough.
Right.
We need concrete action to address systemic inequalities,
Yeah.
ensure equitable access to healthcare,
Yeah.
and prioritize the well-being of marginalized communities.
We need to hold institutions accountable.
Absolutely.
The Tuskegee syphilis study wasn't just the work of a few rogue individuals.
Right.
It was a systemic failure enabled by a culture of silence and complicity.
Yes.
We need systems that prevent such abuses of power
Right.
and prioritize ethical research practices above all else.
The Tuskegee syphilis study is a stark reminder of how easily science can be twisted to serve unethical ends.
It's a story about the enduring legacy of racism,
Yeah.
the importance of holding power accountable,
Mm-hmm.
and the urgent need to create a more just and equitable healthcare system for everyone.
Absolutely.
It leaves us with a profound question.
Yeah.
How can we learn from the mistakes of the past
Right.
to ensure that science serves humanity
Yeah.
and not the other way around?
Exactly.
You know, we've only scratched the surface of this complex
Right.
and a deeply disturbing event.
Mm.
You know, if this deep dive resonated with you,
Mm-hmm.
we encourage you to delve deeper
Yeah.
into the lives of the men who participated,
Yeah.
the ethical debates that followed,
Yeah.
and the ongoing efforts to address health disparities in marginalized communities.
Absolutely.
Subscribe to The Deep Dive for more explorations of the complex
Yes.
and often unsettling truths that shape our world.
Yeah.
We'll be back next week with another thought-provoking deep dive.